dispense with the reading of the roll?
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. President, there are other members that are coming down to speak, but while I've got this time, I wanted to just add a few other things to the record on this. First of all, over the weekend there were some reports and some statements made that this was a manufactured crisis. That was said by one of our colleagues on one of the big talk shows on Sunday morning. First of all, that infers that this is not a real crisis. It was just made up because we enjoy, fighting here in Washington. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is not fun to do. Sometimes it's necessary to draw a sharp contrast between policies because the outcome of which has effects on people's lives in a significant way. Again, where would we have been along the Gulf Coast had the Canter doctrine been in effect and used routinely when Katrina hit the Gulf Coast? Where would we be? Instead of New Orleans being rebuilt, instead of Waveland being rebuilt, instead of Biloxi being rebuilt, instead of large portions of the Gulf Coast being rebuilt today, we would still be probably debating where we're going to find the money to do the work. Now, that's number one. Number two, the crisis may not be real for the whole country right now today as we speak on Monday, but I can promise you for people in many, many, many states, and I'm going to find this document in a minute, in every state, this document here, which I've used on the floor several times in this debate, which is pages and pages, too numerous to mention, they already are having a crisis because these line items and budget numbers represent projects that have already been pink-slipped. These projects have already been shut down. So government is still operating through this week, and we are going to work this out. We are not going to let the government shut down over this, I promise you, if I have anything to say about it. I might not, but my caucus may overrule me. But it is worth arguing about to try to see if we can come to some reasonable compromise, which Leader Reid has offered. But there's already a crisis for those that think this is manufactured. Why don't you spend some time this afternoon calling some of these small business people who have shut down their operations. They were building a road in Alaska. They got stopped because FEMA stopped their funding weeks and weeks ago. This isn't made up by Mary Landrieu. Go call Craig Fugate. Go call anybody on this list. If you think this is manufactured, they stopped their projects. Why? Because FEMA ran out of money, technically ran out of money months ago. They're operating on fumes. In other words, they sort of stopped paying all of their regular work that was going on rebuilding lots of places in America so they could give out their emergency aid to the East Coast. They had no choice because we didn't give them enough money really to make it through the year. Now, I sent a letter on this to the leadership months ago because, of course, I know this. I'm the chair of the committee. They report to me regularly. They keep saying to me, Senator, we're running out of money. We're running out of money. I've been saying this, and I'm going to present letters to the record. Anyone that follows this knows this is true. So this is not a manufactured crisis. This whole issue started when Representative Canter decided that the way to fix this problem is to cut something in the budget and have to offset something in order for us to move forward. And then the gears stopped. It was like he just threw a wrench in the gears. Everything was actually going along quite smoothly. I know that the American people are tired of the fighting, tired of the name-calling. Look, I'm proudly a centrist Democrat. I'm still proud to say that. I've negotiated probably every major deal that's been done or compromise. I've been some ways a part of almost every one for 15 years since I've been here. Some people don't like that about me, but I actually think it's good and I'm proud of it. So I most certainly am not one of the ones that likes to start a partisan brawl just for the heck of it. But this is an important principle. This is an important principle. And the principle is this. Should Americans have to scramble to find offsets while the water is rising and the wind is blowing when we don't require the same for emergencies overseas? We don't scramble to find offsets when a famine breaks out or a drought hits in some parts of Africa. We send the money because that's what Americans do. Yet our people are calling for help at home, and somehow this has gotten on the Tea Party agenda that before you can send them help, you need to run up to Washington and find an offset, and not just any offset, an offset that everybody agrees to. Good luck. There are very few things up here that two people agree to, let alone 535. If I had to do that, Mr. President, for Katrina and Rita, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what I would have done. So we are in a crisis. It may not be for everyone in the country right now like it could be next week if the government shuts down, which it won't. We are going to find a way forward. But for these people, it's been a crisis now for several months. Their bridges projects are shut down. The libraries are shut down. All the workers that were working have been sent home or told, you're working on this project, don't expect a paycheck. Now, I don't know how many people will show up and continue to work without receiving a paycheck. Maybe some people are still doing that. Number two, we sent $1.3 trillion to Iraq and Afghanistan in the last 6 years, 7 years. $1.3 trillion, not requiring one offset. And yet people of Florida are looking for help, people in Vermont are looking for help, and the Canter doctrine says, no, we have to find cuts in the budget. And finally, and I know the senator from Florida wants to speak, I want to correct, because I want to be accurate in this debate, I want to correct one thing that I said. I said that never before have we offset FEMA money. My staff corrected me and said one time in the history, in recent memory, we did that for a small amount of FEMA money when President Clinton was the president, because the Republicans had just come into power and argued back then. President Clinton, to his, well, credit or whatever, found an offset they could both agree to and did it. So it's been done once. I just don't think we should make this a routine exercise here. It's not right for the flood victims. It's not right for taxpayers in the long run. And like I said, eventually we will find a way to pay for these things. So let's come and reason together. Harry Reid has sent a reasonable compromise. I think the House should focus on this and try to take this compromise if we can. It's been worth discussing because this is going to go into law one way or another, and we're going to be living with the consequences. And those of us along the Gulf Coast who are in Hurricane Alley, I showed this chart. It's quite disturbing if you look at this chart, but I'm going to put it up again. This is one of our favorites. The senator from Florida is here. This is from 1851 to 2008. This is every hurricane that has hit the lower 48. And these large colored spaghettis here, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, Gustav, and Ike, show the path of these monster storms. But those of us along the Gulf Coast, and most certainly along the East Coast, should know this is just what happens. Just like if I had a tornado chart that showed where the tornadoes hit or the earthquakes. Every part of the country at some time experiences some disaster. And we don't have to want to run up to Washington and gut the education programs overnight or gut our transportation programs overnight or try to call a special committee meeting to find out where we can come up with $1 billion, by Friday to send money to FEMA. You send it, and we make those decisions over time. It's the way any corporation would operate. It's the way any family would operate, and it is the way our government should operate. And again, if you take this Canter doctrine to its, ridiculous extreme, you would have fire trucks coming up, screaming down the street while the house is on fire, and before they turn the hose on, asking the family to come out and decide, what do you want to cut in the city budget before we can turn the water on, because we actually didn't have this disaster budgeted. Because you can only make reasonable assumptions about what the disaster is going to be, their frequency, their rate, And if you go under a little bit, then you've got to just provide the money until you can fix it in the long run. So I'm going to yield the floor, suggest the absence of a quorum, and I thank the members for engaging in this important debate. Okay. The senator from Florida is here. I understand he is here to speak on this subject.
Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of the House message to accompany H.R. 2608, which the clerk will report.
Motion to concur in the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 2608, an act to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 and for other purposes with an amendment.
Under the previous order, the time until 5:30 p.m. will be equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or their designees.
Mr. President.
The senator from Florida.
Mr. President, I just want to comment before the senator from Louisiana leaves the floor that it's kind of like we've seen this movie before. If I recall, it was Friday. The senator from Louisiana and I were out here with this chart talking about the same thing, showing all of these paths of hurricanes and how those folks that live along the Gulf and the Atlantic coast understand what natural disaster is. We are playing with people's lives when we threaten not to fund FEMA that can respond to all of these. And how many of these do we have to get through to these decision makers that are blocking the funding of FEMA because of some ideological position that there are people out there that are hurting in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in Joplin, Missouri, all throughout New England, through the Atlantic coast, and who knows what's going to happen. Hurricane season goes until the end of November. And so I want to tell the senator from Louisiana how much I appreciate her bringing this to everybody's attention. And over again, we need to remind people there are certain things that only the government can do, and this is one of them. When people are in need, they have to rely on emergency functions from their government. That's one of the main reasons of having a government. And hopefully that message will get through. Well, Mr. President, I wanted to speak about basically this budget conundrum that we find ourselves in. In a little less than an hour, we're going to vote on a motion to cut off debate just to get to the bill that would continue to fund the government after this Friday so that the government can operate. Now, speaking of movies that we've seen before, didn't we see this movie back in early August? Then, over a different question of whether or not the government could continue to pay its bills, but in essence it was the same thing. In that case, it was the lifting of the debt ceiling. In this case, it's to keep the appropriations going starting October the 1st. So if we've seen this movie before, didn't senators and members of Congress go home in August, and didn't they hear from their people? And the people said, "What in the world are you all doing? What are you thinking? Have you guys gone off the rails that you would threaten the shutdown of the government and all the necessary functions of the government that would then imperil our economy already more than how it's being imperiled now in this recession?" Well, you would think that members of Congress got that message. And yet, here we are again. In late September, after we went through that drill in early August, and we're going through the same thing again, this brinksmanship, this partisan, ideological brinkmanship that has all the vestiges of being all balled up in election year politics in a presidential election. Now, that's not any way to run a country. Let me tell you why I think if the folks out across America will start letting their elected representatives know that they've had enough, why we might see some change. With that cataclysmic confrontation that we went through in early August, in order to get the government to pay its bills, we set up a structure, a process in law. There was immediate debt reduction of some $1 trillion. But there's supposed to be another, and I'm rounding, another $1.5 trillion done by this super committee that is supposed to report by Thanksgiving, and we are to vote on it. You remember, Mr. President, a week and a half ago, you and I and 34 other senators, Republicans and Democrats alike, went to the Senate press gallery, and we stood up and we said, we want a big deal of deficit reduction. And a lot of us were suggesting that what we want is tax reform in the process, getting rid of a lot of the clutter in the tax code that is so inefficient in the tax preferences to individual special interests that have grown exponentially over the last 20 years since the last tax reform measure, which was 1986, and instead utilize that revenue, which would be revenue gained, to simplify the tax code and lower rates. And the actuaries tell us that that would, in fact, crank up the engine of growth, and from that growth would come additional revenue. Now, why is that so hard? Every constituent that I have talked to seems to think that that's a fairly good idea. You know what they say? They say it sounds like common sense. And I see other senators on the floor that would like to speak. I want the senator from New York to know that I've been speaking to some of his constituents, the titans on Wall Street, and they're saying the same thing. What in the world are you guys doing? Have you all lost your minds? All right, we've got an opportunity to do something. If we will have as our North Star common sense, bipartisanship, and what's good for the country and not for our particular little ideology, then we can get something done. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from New York.
First, let me thank my colleague from Florida. He knew that I was waiting, and I know he cut short his remarks, and I appreciate it. But more importantly than that, I appreciate his insight, his articulateness, and his desire to help the people of Florida. Nobody works harder for the people of Florida than the senator from Florida, and they know disaster just about better than anybody else given their geographic situation. And so his fight for FEMA dollars is a fight for every citizen of that great state of Florida, where I must say many of my former constituents now reside, so I care especially about Florida as well. So thank him for both his courtesy and his incisifulness. Now, Mr. President, FEMA runs out of money very soon, and already recovery projects in more than 40 states have been halted, so FEMA can focus their last dollars on responding to the latest disasters. To have FEMA not working in Joplin, Missouri, where we all saw the pictures because of the dangers that Hurricanes Irene and Lee created? That's unheard of in this country. It is unheard of. The Senate has already passed a bipartisan bill to replenish FEMA's coffers, providing $7 billion in immediate relief, not just for FEMA, but the Army Corps. I can tell you from my state, we need Army Corps relief as well as FEMA relief because so many of our rivers have changed course or flooded. I think I mentioned earlier that the Erie Canal, the locks are no longer by the river because the storm's force changed the course of the Mohawk. So the river is here and the locks are here, the great historic Erie Canal. So we provided this $7 billion. And a reasonable person might say, all our constituents are saying, get government to work. The most logical thing to do would be quick passage by the House, so we could begin to get those dollars out the door. But instead, House Republicans decided to take emergency disaster aid and leverage it to force cuts to a jobs program that they themselves used to support. If there's ever playing politics, that's it. They didn't like this jobs program, fine. Fight it out in the regular course of business. But don't hold FEMA dollars hostage to cut jobs. The American people don't want that choice. Help those who are in the middle of disaster, but the only way you can help them is to cut jobs in Michigan or Louisiana or other states at a time when our country's hurting for jobs. That's not America, and that's not what they asked us to do. The jobs program they want to end before they're willing to provide more disaster aid is not some radical program. It was started under the Bush administration. It was passed with a bipartisan majority. And I understand their anguish. We have to cut funding. But you don't do it like this. You don't do it on the backs of the people of Schoharie County whose homes have been blown away, of the people of Binghamton who are in shelters because there's no rental housing for them. You don't do it on their backs. That's not fair. You want to have a fight over a program you used to support, and now you say the circumstances have changed. Fine, we should have that. That's what we're here for. But not holding disaster aid hostage. And I want to say this, lest people think that the Democratic stand is some way out there left-wing stand. Guess who supports us? The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Manufacturers, because they know that what we're doing is right. And those are groups that are almost always supporting Republican initiatives. So when they say that we're right, doesn't that send a shot across the bow to my colleagues to back off this ideological, narrow, my way or the highway position? Most importantly, the House Republican approach would require that we kill 40,000 jobs in order to help our fellow Americans put their lives and businesses back together after this year's record disasters. That is not right. It is unprecedented. And I would say it is not the way we have done things in this country in the past. Mr. President, the CR we're going to vote on this afternoon is a fail-safe measure. It is a bill that will keep the government running at funding levels agreed to by Democrats and Republicans in the debt ceiling negotiations. It is a good faith effort to compromise and contains the same exact amount of disaster relief funding that House Republicans supported. It falls short of fully funding FEMA, as we did in the bipartisan bill passed 2 weeks ago with 10 Republican votes. But we're working to meet our colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the middle in order to break the impasse. Will they move a little to the middle to meet us? Or will they insist the only way to go is a bill that failed in this chamber with bipartisan vote against it by 59 to 36? Is Speaker Boehner saying to us a bill that fails in the Senate 59 to 36 is the only way to go when it is so wrong, when it is not supported by the Chamber of Commerce, when it is putting job holders and the future of this country in terms of energy independence versus the disaster assistance people, putting those two against each other? That's not fair. The only difference between our bill and the Senate bill is it doesn't require the job-killing cuts that the Chamber of Commerce opposes and that our fragile economy can't afford right now. Now, we know there's been a lot of pressure on the 10 Senate Republicans that joined us 2 weeks ago to fight full disaster funding and not cave to pressure, and pressure on them to cave to the extreme minority in the House that demands job cuts as a precondition for disaster relief. I would urge them not to do it. And if they can't resist that pressure, what is their solution? They know that the House bill is a dead letter here. So the path forward is clear. The Senate has already spoken on the political bill sent to us by the House. Now we must pass this common sense measure, compromise measure, middle-of-the-road measure that is now before the Senate. It will provide disaster aid to hard-hit communities across the country immediately and prevent an unnecessary government shutdown. We shouldn't even be talking about a shutdown. Why are we? Because the other body decided to attach disaster relief to government funding. We're not just holding jobs hostage, we're holding government funding hostage in a my way or the highway presentation. Take it or leave it, or your government shuts down. Take it or leave it, or 40,000 people lose their jobs. That's not fair and that's not right. Every aspect of our plan has already received major bipartisan support. Voting for it is the right thing to do. We must put politics aside at the times when the economy of this country is so fragile. We must avoid even coming close to a government shutdown. We must do what is right for our country, and what is right for our country is to pass the compromise measure that has had bipartisan support in the past and vote for it on the floor of the Senate in the next half hour. Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, one other thing, Mr. President, I continue to take my time. My great colleague from Louisiana, who's done an incredible job here, she's been showing this, but in case people missed it over the last hour, it's a great little cartoon. There's a nice lady with a gray bun and little glasses talking on the telephone. There's her TV. She's on the roof of her house, which has obviously been flooded. And this cartoon's humorous, but I've seen flood water levels up to this level on house after house after house across large parts of the eastern part of upstate New York. She says, she's on the phone, "Welcome to the Republican Disaster Relief Hotline. At the tone, please tell us the emergency and how you plan to offset the cost of your rescue." Does the next disaster? Are we going to have to debate while people are struggling how much to cut education funds? In the next disaster, while people in next earthquake, are we going to have to debate how to help those people while we talk about how much to cut Border Patrol funds? In the next disaster, when fires are ravaging across Texas or New Mexico or California, are we going to debate how much we have to cut food safety inspectors? That is not our way. And that is why we need to support the bipartisan bill. It's not a bipartisan bill. It has bipartisan elements. Elements of it have been supported by both parties, members of both parties. So that bill, compromise bill, middle-of-the-road bill, that's on the floor of the Senate. I'm going to yield my time and thank my great colleague from Louisiana for the great job she has done.
Mr. President,
Senator from Louisiana.
I thank the senator from New York, who's been a very strong and clarion voice on this issue and has helped to really crystallize what this is about. And he's exactly right. And I want to read into the record, as a senator from Illinois comes to speak, several articles, editorials around the country have editorialized exactly on the position that he ended. And it's the point of this whole debate. If we accept the Canter doctrine, which requires an offset before you can send help to people that are stranded or flooded out or in an ice storm or in the middle of a tornado, we have to come to Washington to cut the budget. The Central Pennsylvania newspaper said it well. They said it's easy to generalize and say our government spends too much money and needs to cut all government programs. Then a tornado. wipes out Joplin, Missouri, or a hurricane called Irene slams into the East Coast, destroying countless homes and lives in Vermont, or a flood devastates communities in Derry Township, Middletown, and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It is then that we count on our local, state, and federal government for help, and in particular for the federal government. We have certainly seen this year, through wind, fire, and rain, and the ice could be next to come, that FEMA's financial efforts cannot be tied to some sort of congressional pay-by-disaster system. We cannot decide with each new catastrophe where we will find money, stripping funds from transportation this month and education the next. That is what this debate is about. We didn't choose this fight. It was started by Representative Eric Canter. There was a moment in time when he said, we must offset this disaster. And some of us stood right up and said, no, we will not. Now, I see my senator from Illinois, but I want to sit for the record. I sent 4 letters as the chair of this committee as early as February. So please don't anyone in the press criticize me for waiting till the last minute. February 16th, 2011, I sent a letter saying, heads up, this is going to be a problem. Now, not many people listened. So then I sent another letter in March. And then I sent another letter in May. Then I sent another letter May 11th. We're now, what are we, September? So please don't, you can accuse me of a lot of things. I most certainly make mistakes, but being ahead of this one isn't one of them. And I knew this was going to happen. And so here we are, because this was not started by Harry Reid. It was not started by Leader Durbin from Illinois. It was started when Eric Canter said that despite the fact that we sent $1.3 trillion to Iraq and Afghanistan to build cities and communities and houses in Iraq and Afghanistan, we can't send any money to Vermont or to New Hampshire or to Virginia, his own state, which is really mind-boggling to me, until we find a program to cut, and then they go cut a program that has bipartisan support that's creating jobs in America. So, Mr. President, I turn it over to the senator from Illinois. He always has some interesting things to add to the debate, and I appreciate his support and his leadership.
Senator from Illinois.
Louisiana, and I ask consent to speak for 10 minutes.
Without objection.
First, let me say to the senator from Louisiana, you have been a clarion, consistent voice on this issue because you have seen it and lived it. Anyone representing the state of Louisiana can give a lesson to all of us about what happens when the unexpected occurs and people lose their homes, their businesses, their lives. They're uprooted. We had some folks from New Orleans up in Chicago. They were leaving New Orleans to come up to one of our fabulous winters because they had nowhere to go. And I saw the look in their eyes. They didn't know where to turn. At that moment in time, many people across America count on the American family. That's who we are, and we represent that family here in the United States Senate. We stand up for this country and for the families that are suffering through no fault of their own. No fault of their own. And when the senator from Louisiana comes and tells us, be careful when you set a standard that says before you can send the first dollar to someone who's lost their home or their business or their farm or whatever, you've got to come back to Washington and go through a budget debate and decide where you're going to cut out of money for education and medical research and the like. That isn't the way it has ever happened. Emergency spending is emergency spending. I've lived through it, nothing like what you went through in Louisiana, but the floods of 1993 in downstate Illinois, I was in pretty decent shape when it was over for all the sandbags I filled, pushed around, with thousands of volunteers. And we saw what happens. There are terrible things that happen, and I think the senator from Louisiana would agree with me that flooding is one of the worst. It just doesn't go away. It sits there, destroying your home and everything you love and own. And when it finally goes away, what a mess is left. We also, in the Midwest, we have a little thing called a tornado. I grew up as a kid in Illinois, downstate Illinois, listening for the siren and heading for the basement. We did that I don't know how many times, sometimes in the middle of the night. But look what happened in Joplin, Missouri. This beautiful town in Missouri, almost wiped off the map by a tornado. So what do you tell the people who survived the next day? Sorry, Congress has to meet and debate. We'll get back to you. Of course not. We stand up and help people. Scores of volunteers, hundreds of volunteers who come in for the Red Cross and so many other agencies, and all of the first responders. Governors don't say, we're going to see if the federal government will help us pay for this before we get in and provide life-saving efforts. They do it, anticipating that we'll stand with them. Now Congressman Canter of Virginia decides that there should be a new approach. We need Congress to get together and debate before we help people who are victims of disasters. That's a serious mistake. We've got to stand by people, whether they live in red states or blue states, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, independents. We stand by one another, and that is critically important. And let me say to the senator from Louisiana, I think the thing that I noticed over the weekend back in Illinois as I traveled around was how fed up people are with what's going on here in Washington on Capitol Hill. When they see us break down into another cussing match over shutting down the government, they say, for goodness sakes, grow up. Grow up and accept your responsibility. Well, we're here today accepting a grown-up responsibility. The House of Representatives is not here today. I hope they're going to send a message to us that they've found a solution. Or if not, I hope they're planning on returning this week because we have work to do. On Saturday, the spending for the government ends, and once again, we face a shutdown. A shutdown which would cause unnecessary hardship to innocent people all across America. If you think you've heard this script before or watched this movie before, you have. This is the third time this year that the House leadership has pushed a shutdown in front of us and said, that's it, take it or leave it. That is no way to run a Congress, and it's no way to run a great nation. We need to come together and agree. Now, I'll tell you what Senator Reid, the leader on the Democratic side, did to try to reach an agreement. We had originally asked for $7 billion for next year, additional money for FEMA. I'll bet we need it. But Senator Reid said, in an effort to compromise, I'll cut that request in half. We can get back together if we need it. There was an effort, a consensus, and compromise. It was totally rejected by the House. That's not a good way to act. And I also want to add what Senator from New York, Senator Schumer, said earlier. This idea that the only way to pay for disasters is to eliminate jobs in America, how wrong is that? To go from a natural disaster to making our economic disaster worse. But that's what the House wanted to do. They wanted to eliminate jobs that are created by programs that have worked. Let me give you an example. This intelligent vehicle, fuel-efficient vehicle program has put money in the major automobile manufacturers to create more manufacturing jobs in Illinois. In Illinois, where we've had more jobs, good-paying American jobs that can't be shipped overseas for workers with a good salary and good benefits. Now, what's wrong with that picture? Isn't that what we're hoping for the rest of America as well? All across the Midwest, these car manufacturers have used this program, and more than 40,000 jobs have been created, and the House Republicans have said, let's eliminate that and pay for disasters with it. Totally upside-down thinking. We've got to be thinking about helping those in distress, and we've got to be thinking about creating jobs, and we can do both. I take no back seat when it comes to tackling the deficit and debt of this country. I've been engaged in this debate for quite a while now, and intensely over the last year and a half. But every economist and every clear-thinking person has said, before you start the serious deficit reduction, take care of your immediate needs. That would be the defense of America and responding to disaster, and make certain this recession is behind you. You cannot balance the budget with 14 million Americans out of work. So get busy on creating jobs, and we're going to. The President's come up with a proposal which I think makes sense, giving a payroll tax cut to working families. In my state of Illinois, where the average family makes about $53,000 a year, President Obama's payroll tax cut would mean an additional $1,500 a year for them. That's going to be about $125 a month in their paychecks. I'll bet they can use it as they watch the price of gasoline go up to $4.50 and go back down again and back up again. They can use it. It also said, let's give small businesses a tax credit and a tax incentive to hire the unemployed. I know, we all know, creating jobs in America has to start with small business. Senator from Louisiana heads up that committee. She knows it. She's been the most aggressive spokesperson for that cause of any in the United States Senate. And the same thing is true about where we spend our money. We should be investing in America. I visited a school today in the suburbs of Chicago in Morton Grove, Illinois, the Gulf Middle School, and they took me on a tour of the 60-year-old school, and it's hard to imagine how they keep it going. They took me down to the boiler room. I don't think many senators spent too much time in boiler rooms at schools today, but I did. Looking at a 60-year-old boiler, and the fellow, Jim Burke, who keeps it running, said it cost us $180,000 last year to keep this old antique running. We need a new HVAC system for the hundreds of kids that go to this school. That's an example of buying things in America, installing them in America, investing them in America so kids can be educated and can succeed in America. That's a plan that we all should endorse in both political parties. Just a few minutes, we're going to have a vote on the floor of the United States Senate. And I hope that we will vote on a bipartisan fashion in a clear voice to say that we're going to stand behind the victims of disasters across America. The American family can come together, and we're not going to cut jobs in order to reduce the pain that people feel in disasters. We can do both. Create American jobs and make certain that those who are struggling through these disasters have the help they need. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Louisiana.
I thank the senator from Illinois, and I continue to be amazed at his energy in terms of leadership and what he does here in Washington and his home state of Illinois, and I really appreciate the comments that he's made to bring to this debate. I want to say again that the vote that we're going to have in a few minutes is going to decide whether we're going to change the way that we help disaster victims. We're either going to do it the way we've pretty much always done it. When a disaster strikes, the federal government steps up. We're there. We encourage our governors and our mayors and our local elected officials to roll up their sleeves, work side by side with people, and take care of business, basically. Get people out of harm's way, move them into shelters, comfort them, console them, keep families together, and then work with them in weeks and months, and sometimes, Mr. President, it takes years to get these communities back up and operating. Or we're going to adopt the Republican sort of Tea Party Canter doctrine, which is my way or the highway, which is why we're having this debate a week before the end of the fiscal year, which says that we're going to have to find money. With each new catastrophe, we're going to have to find money from stripping money from either education or transportation, or in this particular case, stripping money from a program that creates private sector jobs, a public-private partnership, a lending program that helps new and emerging companies get the financial wherewithal to manufacture new automobiles in America that put Americans to work. In fact, what is amazing about this offset that the Republicans have chosen to have this whole debate about is it is an offset, a program that is supported by Republicans themselves. In fact, many Republicans here in the Senate and in the House have actually sent letters, and I'm going to read one or two of those right now, sent letters to the Secretary of Energy asking for funding out of this exact program for creating jobs in their state, which is a legitimate thing to do. It's done all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is then turning around and coming to Washington and voting to gut this program under the guise that you need to do so to help disaster victims. I'm going to read a letter written by the members of the Indiana delegation. At least 3 Republicans have signed this letter. Senator Lugar from Indiana, Representative Dan Burton from Indiana, and Representative Mike Pence from Indiana. They wrote on June 25th, "We write today to highlight the remarkable automotive innovation occurring in Indiana and the tremendous potential for Hoosiers to lead our national effort in transforming the automotive sector. Indiana is uniquely qualified and prepared to lead the nation and the world in the development and commercialization of advanced battery, electric drive vehicles, and other innovative transportation technologies. Hoosiers are committed to reaching our national goal of reducing our dependence on foreign oil, and they are actively researching, developing, and manufacturing technologies that will be cleaner and create lasting jobs. The Hoosier State is the most manufacturing-intensive state in the Union. It's now home to some 700 automotive-related companies, which employ more than 130,000 workers. Moreover, Indiana's broad diversity of domestic and international companies, its long experience manufacturing light-duty, heavy-duty, recreational, and military vehicles, and its rich legacy pioneering the development of electric-powered trains make the state a national hub for automotive technology development. They go on and on. They say Indiana already is home to a number of established and emerging battery and electric vehicle technology companies. In addition, Indiana's world-class research universities, including Purdue, Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, and the University of Notre Dame, have formed an active research and development partnership. The letter goes on and on to say what a great job they're doing. We strongly encourage you to give full consideration to the innovative applications for federal investments made by Indiana companies through the Electric Drive Vehicle Battery Component Manufacturing Initiative and the $25 billion Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Loan Program. That is the exact loan program that Republicans from Indiana have written to ask funding for that they're now eliminating to pay for disasters. If this were a program that wasn't working, if this was a program that didn't create jobs in America, if this was a program that Republicans privately and publicly acknowledged was not a good program, that's one thing. But to run home and cut ribbons to say you're creating jobs in Indiana or in New York or in Illinois and then run up here and cut the program claiming you have to do so to help disaster victims when it is just about unprecedented in the history of our country, there is something terribly wrong with this. We don't need to be destroying jobs, Mr. President. We need to be creating them. We don't need to be making excuses about how we don't have to help victims of disasters. We need to be helping them. And I guess I take this a little bit personally because while the rest of the members sort of say things like, well, FEMA's not really running out of money, they can probably make it until Friday, and, you know, there's some talk about that going on, and, you know, there's some technical ways that that could be done. I want to remind everyone here, this is already an emergency for these over 400 projects that were shut down weeks ago. If you were a small business owner that had a subcontract building a road in Alaska, Mr. President, it's an emergency for you because you were shut down and you can't make payroll. You've already probably bought the supplies to build the bridge, and nobody is, on the Republican side, is caring about your crisis. So FEMA is technically out of money as we speak. The only way they're continuing to operate is because they've shut down these projects. This is the third time in the last 6 years, to my knowledge, that projects have been shut down across the country. Why is that right? Many of those projects are in Louisiana. Some of them are in Mississippi, and some of them now are in Joplin, because if you were a disaster that happened a few years ago, because the Republicans either won't budget the money, won't budget enough money, or every time you go to ask for a dime, they require an offset somewhere else. So truly what's happening is disaster victims in other parts of the country are subsidizing this foolishness. And this does not fall equally on the backs of Democrats and Republicans. I know people are tired of hearing it, but it doesn't. Harry Reid didn't start this fight. Mary Landrieu didn't start this fight. Dick Durbin didn't start this fight. Eric Canter of Virginia, a Republican leader, started this fight when he said, we cannot fund the 2011 disasters without an offset. So in this whole debate, what they've done is shut down projects in Louisiana and Mississippi to try to get, despite the fact that I've said we don't really need an offset, we've already made arrangements in next year's budget. It's unprecedented, Representative Canter. Your state is going to be hurt as well. He doesn't seem to care. But I do care, and I do think it's worth talking about. I don't know if we will win this battle today. I don't know if we will win this vote this afternoon. I'm not the whip. I don't count the votes. All I do is keep my eyes on the people that are in disasters, because I've had to for the years that I've been, unfortunately, the senator from Louisiana that's been through the worst natural disaster that our country has ever known. And I've walked through too many destroyed neighborhoods. I've cried with too many people. I've watched what they go through. And so for me, this is not a simple change. This is a major change that we cannot afford in this country and our people don't deserve. We cannot have a budget meeting every time there's a disaster in America and try to run up here and in 30 minutes or 2 days or a week decide what program we're going to slash that everybody can agree to so we can send help, whether it's to West Virginia or to Florida or to Michigan or Louisiana. That's no way to run a government. Now, Tea Party people and Republicans want to bring change to Washington. I welcome some of that change, but not this. This is not a change we need. This is not a good policy for America. I am not opposed to change. I'm adaptable. I'm a centrist. I'm a moderate. I can listen to what Republicans want to say and Democrats, and I'm proud of that. It's a strength. I consider it a strength, not a weakness. This is not a change that I can support lightly, and that's what this fight is about. We may be forced to change, but if we are, I want the people of America to know this was Eric Canter's idea. This is on the Tea Party agenda. I don't think it should be on America's agenda. And I see the governor, senator from West Virginia.
Senator from West Virginia.
Technical difficulties right now. Mr. President, I think that we all appreciate so much our colleague from Louisiana's passion and compassion for the people of America. Not just the people of Louisiana, but all over America, and I thank her. I thank her for taking this fight and making sure people understand what we're fighting for. Being one of the other centrists in that body, and I think we have a majority right now, 3 of us here, so I appreciate very much all of us being in attendance. I rise today to address the enormous frustration the American people must feel at witnessing their government and their leaders engaging in another futile political exercise. Incredibly, our government is being driven, and I agree with Senator from Louisiana that we're not going to shut down over this, but it's unbelievable to get into the fuss that we're in right now to make people believe that we could come to another brinks of that when we just went through this bloody mess in August. There is not a state in this great nation that hasn't suffered the terrible tragedy and cost of a natural disaster. While there are many government programs and issues that we should vigorously debate, we surely cannot question the responsibility of government to help our communities in their darkest moments. Mr. President, in the America that I believe in, we don't look the other way when a community is suffering from the pain of a natural disaster. We stand up and offer a helping hand. It is this spirit of helping each other that has defined this nation since its very beginning, and we cannot let politics destroy that spirit. Our belief in helping each other is a bedrock value for this country, and it runs much deeper than a belief in a political party. We're Americans, and for the sake of this great nation, I know that we all love these petty squabbles that defines this place must end. That is why we must fund FEMA disaster relief, and why I voted for a Senate bill that would fund FEMA through the end of the fiscal year. Yes, we all agree that funding for disaster relief should be paid for in these most difficult times, and especially now that we're looking at these deficits that we have accrued. Yes, we must save and set aside that money. My grandfather once told me, Mr. President, and I think you can appreciate this being a small business person, you can't give someone the shirt off your back if you don't have a shirt to give them. And we have to plan and work hard to make sure that we can put ourselves in position to help others. Yes, we must return to the path of fiscal responsibility, where we manage our budgets wisely and put away enough money for the eventual disasters that we know will strike. In my great state of West Virginia, we call a contingency fund. We know that we're going to have the floods, and we know that we're going to have challenges throughout our state, and we set aside every budget year X amount of dollars, and we accumulate that to use it for a crisis. We could do the same right here in this great country of ours and on the nation's capital. But it is wrong, and it is no ifs and ands and buts about it, absolutely wrong to pay for disaster relief out of funds that are creating jobs, with the potential of creating even more jobs. Are there problems with some of the programs? Absolutely. Can we fix those programs? Absolutely. And should we eliminate programs that cost too much and offer little return? Absolutely. But are we so desperate to score political points that we eliminate a program, the Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Program, which has actually helped bring jobs back to America? For the record, that program is credited with saving or creating 39,000 American jobs, most with the Ford Motor Company, an American manufacturer, something we need more of in this country. It is a program with support from both the Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Manufacturers. In fact, Ford actually moved a hybrid battery facility from Mexico to Michigan because of this loan program. Now, I can think of a lot of programs that we should fight over, but are we really going to defund a program that has helped bring jobs back to America? I don't think so. So where do we go from here? Well, to my Republican and Democratic leaders, I respectfully ask them to consider how simple a choice we face. We can rebuild America, or we can afford to pay for it. We can choose to fund FEMA or afford to pay for it. We can do all this if we face the fact that we cannot continue to go into debt and spend billions in Afghanistan while suggesting that in order to fund FEMA, we must cut a program that actually helped create jobs in America. Mr. President, as I've said before, we must choose between rebuilding Afghanistan or rebuilding America, and today we can make that choice. I, along with many of you, choose to rebuild America. At a time when our economy is struggling and our deficits are exploding, I cannot believe that we in Washington would choose to rebuild another nation at the expense of our own. We can do better than this, and for the sake of our nation's future, we must do better than this. We should not engage in a political theater that makes the false choice between funding disaster relief or eliminating a jobs program that actually helped create American jobs. Mr. President, it's time for us to set our priorities. It is time for us to rebuild America, not to rebuild Afghanistan or Iraq, and helping America to rebuild during times of natural disaster must be a priority that cannot be defined by partisanship. In West Virginia alone, several projects worth nearly $500,000 have now been put on hold because of the bickering and squabbling that goes on. Those projects include funding to help individuals whose property was damaged in the severe snowstorms in 2009, flooding in 2010, as well as critical equipment that monitors water flow in areas prone to flooding, equipment that is vital for forecasting river levels during our floods. This doesn't make any sense to me, Mr. President, and I know it doesn't make any sense to the people of West Virginia. I cannot believe that any American would choose to lose billions more in waste and corruption in Afghanistan while we ignore the needs of our neighbors here at home, our neighbors who just this year survived tornadoes, floods, and hurricanes, and who need shelter and food. Mr. President, to the end, I would like to offer the following amendment to offset the cost of funding FEMA by eliminating $1.6 billion from programs that will fund nation building in Afghanistan and instead direct that money to FEMA, to programs that rebuild America. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President, is there time remaining? There is no time remaining on the Democratic side. No time remaining at all.
I'd ask consent for 30 seconds.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the senator from West Virginia is absolutely right. We have tens of billions of dollars sitting in accounts now unspent for Iraq and Afghanistan for rebuilding roads and all there. Let's spend it in America. Let's spend it on America. It's American tax dollars. Let's spend it in America. I yield the floor.
Yes.
In fact, before we do that, I note...
Majority Leader?
I note the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander.